we move on to Kevin Durant, basically on his ethics podcast via Boardroom, um, talking about a bunch of things, Bronny James, where he fits and how he wants him to go to college and get that experience, and thinks that would help his game on the next level. Little Yachi interview that he did, uh, and stuff like that. But most importantly, I wanted to address the Charles Barkley comments. And basically, they lead into uh, the bus driver comments that Charles Barkley made, basically alluding that, hey, some guys are the leader of the bus, driving the bus, and basically Kevin Durant going to Golden State. You joined something that was already going on, and I understand it from the dynamic that Charles Barkley was saying. Basically, not saying that he wasn't a leader, but you kind of joined something that was already good, something that was already a proven commodity. Where that was Steph Curry's team, his leadership, Draymond Green, like they had an infrastructure there that you joined in, basically were a passenger on that. You didn't build that on your own. And it's kind of a paradox because, Charles Barkley did leave, go to Phoenix, got to the finals. He was the best player on that team, got to the finals, and then they didn't win. And then he went to Houston, tried to join up with Clyde and Akeem Olajuwon at that point, later stages in their career. But it was basically they were saying he was ring chasing. And the bus driver comments kind of made sense to me because I've always said about Kevin Durant, you add, basically like the league said, you add Kevin Durant to the Golden State Warriors, it was automatic that they were going to the finals, right? And they had a chance to win 3 finals. They got 2 championships. They got a chance to win 3 finals, right? So when you think about that run there, and it's like you kind of already joined a commodity there where they kind of need, and I always say this, you kind of just needed you to make the shots that Harrison Barnes missed in the NBA Finals, that Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Harrison Barnes missed in the NBA Finals. You add Kevin Durant, who's a 30-point per game scorer, 50, 40, 90 almost every year, on the verge of that. It was automatic. That's the point that people were trying to make about those comments there, where people are saying, yo, you joined something that was already a commodity that already did it. But on the aspect of what Kevin Durant said in the interview, he was like, yo, man, that's a team accomplishment. That's a team thing. It doesn't matter who's the best player, who's the leader, or whatever the case may be. And Kevin Durant has this way of talking in his interviews where it's like, okay, I understand that standpoint completely, right? Like, it is a team effort, right? Like, it doesn't just take one person to do that. But then you went to Brooklyn and try to lead your own team, and that flamed out. That's the reality of that. You tried to lead that on your own and try to build something on your own with Kyrie Irving. Yeah, it was Kyrie Irving, whatever the case may be, but you were the top guy on that team. You're going to get the brunt of that. Where in Golden State, you were not going to get the brunt of that. Maybe if they lost, people would have been like, hey, you failed, or whatever the case may be. But under the circumstances of the injury and stuff like that, that was understandable. But the bus driver comments, people like to try to ignore that and try to act like that doesn't matter, or whatever the case may be when it comes to Kevin Durant. And it's just like, when you think about, when I think about my top 10 of NBA players, you think about the main thing to me is, were you a leader of your team? That's the main thing. In Oklahoma City, you were the leader of that team. You didn't get it done in Oklahoma City. That's fine. But when I think about the top 10 players in the NBA history, I think about, did you lead your team? So my top 10 goes Bill Russell, Kareem, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kevin Durant, Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain, and Hakeem Olajuwon. People are going to have a problem with that, whatever the case may be. I generally say, people say Kobe's not in your top 10. I just, in the history of the game, I believe forwards and centers have a bigger impact on the game. And I'll explain that sometime down the road. But all those guys were leader of their teams. Outright leaders of their team. That's how I look at the bus driver comments. That's how I look at when Charles Barkley talks about guys who have led their teams, been the number one guys, everything fell on them. That's how I look at it. That's how I look at the bus driver comments. And that comes in when ranking players. And maybe Kevin Durant doesn't care where he's ranked, or whatever the case may be. But that stuff matters. That stuff matters in the history of the game, of ranking players, legacies. Like that stuff matters in the history of the basketball. Maybe you don't care. That's fine. But as people analyze and people look at the history of the game, that stuff matters. That flat out matters. I don't care what nobody says. That stuff matters in the game basketball, period. That stuff matters. It does. And I think Kevin Durant gets lost in that, and he's trying to find his way about that. And maybe Kevin Durant won't be that cloth of player. Is he a top 20 player of all time? Absolutely. There's no question about that. I feel like he's in that category. Inching maybe towards that second tier of 10, 15, inching that if he plays a couple of awards, he's able to get another championship, finals MVP, whatever the case may be. He's of that cloth. And I think Kevin Durant's that type of player. But what keeps him out the top 10 for me is that you didn't have those crowning achievements where you led a team. Like, yes, he was the best player, 1-2 finals MVPs for his team. But there's a lot of people I have in front of him just for the simple fact that they did not lead their team, that he did not lead his team. There's little stuff like that that matter, the little nuances when breaking down players' careers and stuff like that. That's the one thing that I look at. Did you lead your team? Can I look at a sheet of paper and be like, yo, did you lead your team here? If the answer is no, I'm not going to put you ahead of him. Like, I don't have him. People might get gripey about this, might get pissed about this, but I don't have him above Moses Malone. I think Moses Malone gets ignored. Moses Malone was a 3-time MVP. Like, that's going to hold a lot of weight in my conversations when looking at all-time players. That's just the way it is for me. But on the bus driver comments, people are going to play coy to that and try to say that stuff doesn't matter and it's a team stuff and all this other stuff. But it's like, that's not how it goes. As a person who loves the game, follows the game, like that's not how it goes, at least for me. Hopefully for other people it's not, because I feel like the game is more complex than that.